Have you ever wondered what you'll regret most at the very end of your life? It's rarely the mistakes you made. It's the life you never fully lived, the words you never spoke, the moments you rushed through, the quiet joys you told yourself could wait. But what if that waiting is the greatest regret of all? This is not just a lesson in dying, it's an invitation to live, here and now. There comes a time, often not marked by age but by awareness, when we begin to ask the deeper questions. Have I lived true to myself, or have I simply played the roles expected of me? These questions tend to arrive quietly, in the middle of ordinary days, a ray of light across the floor, a memory you didn't expect, a silence that feels both comforting and haunting. 10 years ago, I came across a book that changed how I see time and what it means to truly live. It was written by Bronnie Ware, a palliative care nurse who spent years sitting beside people in the final days of their lives. In that fragile space where there is no need to pretend, she heard 5 regrets again and again. They weren't about money, fame, or success. They were about presence. They were about love, courage, connection, and joy that had been postponed until it was too late. They wished they had lived true to themselves. They wished they hadn't worked so hard. They wished they'd spoken their hearts more. They wished they'd stayed close to their friends. And most of all, they wished they had let themselves be happier. Reading these regrets felt like being handed a lantern in the dark, not as a warning, but as a quiet offering, as if those who had run out of time were passing the torch to the rest of us, saying, "Live now before your someday turns into never." In Buddhism, the present moment is not just important, it is sacred. The past is already gone. The future is uncertain, but this moment, this breath, this heartbeat is alive. And in this moment, you have everything you need to begin again. So before we go any further, let's pause together. Breathe. Come back to where life is actually happening. Not in memory, not in worry, but right here, in this quiet, miraculous now. Let this be your beginning. 1. The 5 regrets of the dying and the quiet Buddhist lessons hidden within. There is something sacred about listening to the final words of those who stand at the edge of life. In those quiet moments when all that is unnecessary has fallen away, what remains is truth. Not the kind we shout across crowded rooms, but the kind whispered between breaths, when all that matters is what we carry in our hearts. Bronnie Ware, who spent years beside the dying, shared these final whispers with the world, and what emerged was not a list of complaints, but a gentle unveiling of what so many of us miss in the rush of living. Many spoke of wishing they had lived a life true to themselves, not one shaped by others' expectations. How often we carry roles handed to us by parents, society, tradition, so quietly, so obediently, that we forget we ever had a choice. We walk paths not because they're ours, but because they were laid out for us. But in the end, the soul yearns not for approval, but for authenticity. Buddhist teachings speak of right intention, of living in alignment with the heart's quiet knowing. To live otherwise is to wear a mask until the face beneath it forgets how to breathe. Others regretted working too hard, not because they didn't love their work, but because in the pursuit of productivity, they sacrificed the presence that gives life its meaning. The moments missed with children, the silence never shared with a spouse, the simple meal eaten hurriedly instead of with gratitude. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha reminds us, there is no fire like passion, no crime like hatred, no sorrow like separation, no sickness like hunger, and no joy like the peace of contentment. We were not meant to be machines. We were meant to be aware, alive, awake. There were also those who wished they had expressed their feelings more freely. In our fear of being too much, we become too silent. We hold back our affection. We delay our apologies. We suppress our truths. And yet, love unspoken can be the heaviest weight to carry. The practice of right speech in Buddhism isn't just about restraint. It is about speaking with clarity, compassion, and courage. It is the freedom to say, "I love you, I forgive you, I need you," before the moment passes us by. Many longed for the friendships they let slip away, not through anger, but through neglect. The shared laughter, the old stories, the presence of someone who knew you when you were still becoming. In Buddhist tradition, spiritual friendship is seen as the entire path. The people who walk beside us, whether for a season or a lifetime, remind us of who we are. They hold mirrors to our becoming. When we lose them, we lose parts of ourselves. And perhaps the quietest regret of all, I wish I had let myself be happier. Not that happiness was unavailable, but that it was postponed. Postponed until the house was paid off, until the children were grown, until the body was lighter, the world more calm. But the truth, as every Buddhist meditation teaches, is that happiness is not a destination, it is a presence. It is found in stillness, in gratitude, in letting go. These regrets are not meant to haunt us. They are lanterns. They illuminate the paths we can still walk, the doors we can still open. For as long as we breathe, we are being offered the chance to live differently, not later, not someday, but now. 2. The illusion of later. How modern life steals the present. There is a quiet lie we are taught from the moment we become aware of time, one that burrows deep into the way we live, choose, and wait. It's the belief that life can be postponed, that joy can wait, that healing can be scheduled, that the things that matter, rest, love, connection, creation, can be set aside until later. We convince ourselves there will be more time, another weekend to visit a friend, another season to forgive, another year to begin living the way we truly want. But slowly, and often without realizing it, we begin building a life not out of presence, but out of delay. This illusion, so subtle and so deeply woven into modern life, is one of the most dangerous because it rarely feels like a threat. It disguises itself as logic, responsibility, maturity. Now is not the time, we say. Maybe next year, when I retire, when the kids grow up, when I feel better. And so the soul waits and waits, not knowing that in truth, later is not a place we are guaranteed to reach. The Buddha once offered this reflection: do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. At first glance, it sounds simple, perhaps even obvious, but beneath those words lies a profound challenge, because concentrating the mind on the present moment doesn't mean just noticing what is here. It means choosing it, honoring it, living as though this breath, this conversation, this simple day is worthy of your full heart. And yet, we live in a world that does everything it can to pull us away from now. Modern life is fast. It is loud. It measures worth by progress, success, movement. We are told that stillness is laziness, that contentment is complacency, that those who pause will fall behind. So we run after goals, after security, after a version of happiness that always seems one step ahead. We fill our calendars, crowd our thoughts, and chase experiences, believing that satisfaction waits on the other side of accomplishment. But in this chase, we miss the small things that make life real: the warmth of tea sipped slowly, the texture of sunlight through old curtains, the trembling joy of someone saying, "I've missed you." These are not luxuries for the fortunate. They are the heartbeats of a meaningful life, and they only exist in the now. Many of us reach a certain age and begin to look back, not with bitterness but with a quiet wonder. Where did the years go? We remember days that blurred together, phone calls we never made, dreams we left unopened in the back of our minds. We realized that someday never arrived because we were always waiting for the perfect conditions. But the truth is, life was never meant to be lived in perfect conditions. It was meant to be lived honestly, imperfectly, courageously, in the middle of the mess, the noise, the uncertainty. There is a Zen story of a man who asked his teacher, "When should I begin my practice?" The teacher replied, 10 years ago." The man looked confused. The teacher then smiled and said, "The second best time is right now." It's easy to laugh at this, but it holds a tender truth. The best moment to begin living more fully has already passed. But the next best moment is always this one. And so we are faced with a choice, not later, but today. To open the letter you've kept in the drawer for years. To call the friend whose voice you still miss. To go outside and watch the clouds as if you've never seen them before. To listen to your spouse with both ears. To hold your grandchild and let them feel through your arms what it means to be cherished. Living in the present doesn't require a retreat to the mountains or a life free of responsibility. It simply asks that we show up fully sincerely where we already are. It asks that we stop deferring our joy until all is settled. Because the truth is, life will never be settled, but it can still be beautiful. So if there is a dream in you waiting for the perfect moment, if there is someone you love but haven't said so, if there is something small that brings you joy, but you've told yourself it can wait, this is your invitation. Let today be the moment you stop postponing. Let it be the moment you forgive, begin, connect, rest or create. Not because the conditions are perfect, but because this moment is all you truly have, and it is enough. 3. The power of beginning. Even before you're ready, there is a quiet myth that many of us carry, often without knowing. It whispers to us in the early morning when we think about starting something new, or in the late evening when we reflect on the things we've always meant to do. The myth says, "Not yet." It says we are not ready, not skilled enough, not brave enough, not young enough. And so we wait. For clarity, for confidence, for the right timing. We wait and wait. And in that waiting, our lives quietly begin to pass us by. But Buddhist wisdom offers a different view. It tells us that readiness is not a requirement for the path. It is the result of walking it. The courage, the clarity, the strength we seek does not come before the first step. It comes after. In fact, it is the step itself that creates the person we are longing to become. In the same way a flame is not born until the match strikes, our becoming does not begin until we take the first uncertain move toward it. The Buddha's own life is a reflection of this truth. Before he was enlightened, he was simply Siddhartha, a young man filled with questions and discomfort, unsure of what lay ahead. He left behind his palace, not with answers, but with longing. And yet, by stepping into the unknown, he began the very path that would one day lead to awakening. Not because he was ready, but because he was willing. Modern life, with all its emphasis on perfection and performance, teaches us to delay. It tells us to prepare, to polish, to wait until every detail is aligned. We want guarantees before we begin. We want to know how it will turn out. But life does not work like that. The most meaningful changes, the ones that reshape our inner world, come not from certainty, but from courage. Think of all the things you've dreamed of doing, but never started. A creative passion, a long overdue letter, a conversation from the heart, a walk in nature alone, a quiet act of forgiveness. How many of these have you placed gently on a shelf, telling yourself, someday when I'm ready? But here's the truth that most of us discover too late. The only thing you ever need to begin is this moment, and a willingness to begin messy, imperfect, unsure. A woman in her late 60s once shared with me her story during a silent retreat. She had always wanted to write a memoir, something simple, not to publish, just to leave behind for her children. But for 30 years she had waited for a time when she would be a better writer. She took classes, bought notebooks, read books on storytelling, but the writing never came. One day she realized with quiet sorrow that her hesitation wasn't about skill, it was about fear. Fear of not doing it well enough. Fear of what others would think, but mostly fear of starting. So she began with one paragraph, then a page, then another. The memoir she feared would be not good enough became a treasure to her family. But more than that, it gave her the peace of knowing she had honored her truth, imperfectly, honestly, completely. When we wait to be ready, we place our lives on hold. But when we begin just as we are, from wherever we stand, something powerful happens. Each step we take becomes a vote of trust in ourselves. With every act, we say to life, I may not know what I'm doing, but I believe it's worth doing anyway. And in return, life often meets us with grace. Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." The same can be said of beginning. That the power of beginning is not only in what it leads to, but in what it awakens inside of us right now, a sense of possibility, of movement, of becoming alive again. So if you've been waiting to start something, whether it's healing, creating, reconnecting, or simply living more honestly, know that waiting will not make it easier. The fear will not disappear on its own. But when you act despite the fear, when you take that first small step, the fear will slowly lose its grip, and in its place, something beautiful will grow. The strength of having honored your own unfolding. You don't need to see the whole path. You don't need to know how the story ends. You only need to take the next small step with intention. Begin gently, begin now, and let the path reveal itself with each breath. Because readiness is not a destination, it is the gift we receive for choosing to begin. 4. This moment is enough. A teaching from a mother's answer. There's a story I once heard, quiet and simple, but it stayed with me like a soft bell echoing through the years. A child asked their mother, "What was the best moment of your life?" The child, in their innocence, expected a grand answer: the day she got married, the day her child was born, a long-awaited achievement. But the mother paused, smiled gently, and said, "This moment, right now." At first the child didn't understand. What could be special about a quiet afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea with no occasion at all? But there was something in the mother's voice, something still and true, that made the child stop asking and begin listening. That story is not just about one mother's wisdom. It is about the profound truth that many of us spend a lifetime overlooking. This moment is enough. Not the next one, not the one we're trying to plan, not the one we long for in memory, but the one unfolding now, gently, quietly, before our very eyes. In Buddhist teaching, this insight is at the heart of mindfulness, the ability to be fully present without judgment, to embrace what is without longing for what was or grasping for what might be. But mindfulness is not just a practice on a meditation cushion. It is a way of meeting life, one breath at a time. It is the gentle art of realizing that nothing more is needed in this instant than your open heart and steady attention. Yet, how often do we live as though this moment is merely a bridge to something better? We rush through our meals to get to our work. We scroll through screens to avoid silence. We fill our days with tasks and distractions, as though we are afraid of stillness, as though the present moment is not quite enough. But it is here, in this very moment, that the entirety of life is available to us, not in some distant future, not in an edited past. Here, now. When we are young, we long for what's ahead. When we are older, we often dwell on what has passed. But both are illusions if they remove us from the reality that life is always happening now. We may carry the past with us like a cherished photo album, and we may dream tenderly about what is still to come. But neither the photo nor the dream can be touched. Only this moment can be held. The great Zen master Dogen once said, "Do not think that time merely flies away. Do not see flying away as the only function of time. If time merely flies away, you would be separated from time. The truth is, you are time." In other words, we are not outside of the moment, waiting for life to catch up to us. We are the moment. Every breath, every blink, every choice is a part of the unfolding of now. And the miracle is when we give ourselves fully to this present moment, no matter how ordinary, it becomes luminous. We begin to see what we used to overlook. The warmth in a friend's voice, the sound of wind against the window, the joy in a child's laugh, the way light pools on the floor. Suddenly the mundane becomes sacred. There is a quiet dignity in presence, a strength not born from effort, but from surrender. When we stop trying to reach the next thing, we begin to see that what we have now is not just enough. It is everything. The meal in front of us, the hand we are holding, the silence between words. These are the treasures we once passed by in search of something greater. For many elders, this truth arrives slowly but surely. As responsibilities fall away and the world's noise dims, we begin to see more clearly what was there all along. Presence is not something we find, it is something we return to, like coming home after a long journey, only to realize the place we were looking for has always been right where we are. So if you're asking yourself, when will I finally feel peace? When will I be happy? When will I know I've arrived? Perhaps the answer is not in another day or another decade, but in a gentle turning inward, a soft recognition that this is the moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this cup of tea. It doesn't need to be more spectacular, it just needs to be noticed. And so, as the mother said, this moment, right now, it is the most precious we'll ever have. And if we let it in, if we truly let it in, it is more than enough. 5. Call to presence, a quiet wisdom invitation. There comes a time in life, not always marked by age, but often by understanding, when we begin to see things differently, not because the world has changed, but because we have. The noise that once pulled us in 100 directions begins to soften. The urgency to prove, to impress, to achieve, starts to loosen its grip. And in that newfound stillness, we begin to feel something more essential, calling us back, not forward, not backward, but here, to the quiet presence of this very moment. It's easy to think that wisdom arrives in flashes of insight, in grand realizations, or mystical awakenings. But more often, wisdom comes gently. It appears in the decision to listen more and speak less, in the choice to walk slowly, to breathe fully, to savor a single conversation as if it were the last of its kind. Wisdom reveals itself in how we return, again and again, to the present moment, even after years of wandering away. And so, let this be an invitation, not to change your life, but to notice it. To see it perhaps for the first time in a long while, not as a list of obligations, but as a field of quiet miracles. The breath you're taking right now, the memory that just passed through you like sunlight on skin, the way your hands rest when you're at ease. These are not small things, they are everything. We often wait for permission to live as we long to. We tell ourselves we must first finish the to-do list, solve the problems, settle the heart. Only then can we rest. Only then can we be gentle with ourselves. Only then can we finally enjoy the time we have. But if we're not careful, only then becomes a lifetime of postponement. And so this is the gentle truth we must embrace. The life we long for is not waiting somewhere down the road. It is quietly asking to be lived right now. The Buddha once taught that enlightenment is not a destination, but a recognition, a remembering of what has always been true. That the present moment is the only moment we ever truly have. That everything we think we are chasing, peace, freedom, connection, meaning, is already woven into the very fabric of now. We need only to stop and receive it. So, what does that look like? Sometimes, it's a phone call you've delayed because you didn't know what to say. Make it. Let your voice tremble if it must, but let it be heard. Sometimes, it's the side project, the creative impulse, the buried dream you've kept tucked away for decades. Begin. You don't need applause. You only need to honor the part of you that has waited so patiently to be expressed. Other times, it's simpler. Sit in the sun. Watch the wind play in the trees. Let your coffee cool while you trace the pattern of steam rising into the morning air. Hug your partner for a beat longer. Tell someone that they matter, or say nothing at all, and simply be together in silence, knowing that presence alone is its own kind of love. These are not dramatic acts. They won't be posted, shared, or celebrated by the world, but they are sacred, because they are real, and because they bring you back to yourself. So ask yourself gently, and with great kindness, what would your life look like if you stopped waiting? If you stopped seeking validation and simply trusted your own breath, your own timing, your own enoughness? What would life feel like if you allowed joy to enter, not as a reward, but as a right? If you lived today not as a rehearsal, but as the main event? At the end of this life, when the house is quiet and the body softens, when all that remains are the people we've loved and the memories we've lived, we will not measure our lives in years or possessions. We will measure it in presence. In the days we truly showed up, in the quiet courage it took to begin again, in the small moments we didn't rush through, in the laughter we allowed ourselves to feel, in the kindness we gave without hesitation, that, and only that, will remain. So take this as your invitation, from this quiet voice to yours. Not to fix yourself, not to change everything overnight, but simply to be here, be tender, be honest, begin, even if your hands tremble, love, even if your heart feels guarded, rest, even if the world tells you not to, trust, even if the path is unclear. The moment you've been waiting for is not in the distance. It is already here, and it has been patiently waiting for you. Conclusion. A life without regret is one lived with awareness. As this gentle journey together comes to a close, let us pause, not in farewell, but in reverence. Reverence for the life you have lived. Reverence for the life that still awaits you. And above all, reverence for this very breath, this quiet moment that belongs to no one else but you. We began this reflection with the regrets of the dying, not to sadden the heart, but to awaken it. To remember that the greatest sorrow is not in what we have done, but in what we never gave ourselves permission to begin. We looked at the stories of those who waited too long to be honest, to rest, to love, to create, to be, and through their whispered wisdom, we found our own lives gently being held up to the light. But what you do from this moment forward, that is no longer about regret, that is about choice. And choice, dear friend, is the greatest freedom we are ever given. You do not need to rewrite your past. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to rush or force or strive. You need only to remember you are already enough. This life, in all its imperfection and beauty, is already sacred. And every time you choose to show up for it, fully presently with tenderness, that is a victory far deeper than any worldly success. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a quiet teaching that says, when you walk, just walk. When you eat, just eat. Simple words, but they carry a truth that can heal a lifetime of distraction. They remind us that peace is not found in the next chapter. It is written, word by word, in how we live this one. So let this be your beginning, not a grand gesture, but a quiet vow, to live more gently, to love more openly, to speak more truthfully, to pause more often, to forgive what is old, and to embrace what is now. Let this day not be another page turned in haste, but a page read slowly, savored, underlined with presence. And if ever you forget, as we all do sometimes, may you return to this stillness, to the sound of your own breath, to the simplicity of noticing, to the warmth of being alive. Because when all is said and done, the real measure of your life will not be found in how much you accomplished, but in how deeply you lived and how tenderly you loved. So go, not in a hurry, not to chase anything, but to walk gently, with your eyes open and your heart free. And remember, it is never too late to begin again.